Thought I lost an old friend recently. After 15 years of law service, skip loads of dust, 2 house refurbs, my dear old Henry vacuum finally died the other day when I was vacuuming something up. Nasty smell came out of the motor, then it just stopped working. Thought to myself, that's it, it's died. But then I thought, if a vacuum was made that well, surely, just like the DIYte toasters that I've featured in previous videos, it's got to be easy to repair, right? Of course it was. And in today's video, I'm going to show you just how I did it. And I'm going to show you how you can buy a genuine replacement for your pneumatic motor for the same price as a compatible imitation motor. Now, when I first started researching replacement motors for my Henry, I got a bit of a shock because I went online to Numatic Spares, and the Numatic 2-stage through flow taper fan motor for the Henry was £106, and I thought, what? 106 quid? A new Henry only costs 120, 130. So I resigned myself to the fact that I wasn't going to be able to buy a genuine pneumatic motor for the Henry, and went on the Espares website where I found this 1400 watts, so slightly more powerful motor. It's a compatible, so it's not a genuine pneumatic motor. I ended up buying one of these, but I was a bit worried because whilst most of the reviews are really favourable, there were a couple of reviews like this one that said that the replacement motor was a lot bigger than the original, not a direct replacement, and basically they had to use some magic and a mastic gun to remove original rubber bits of cradling to accommodate the new motor. But that was the mistake that guy in the review made, and that was the mistake I made when I did the research for my motor. You can't just go on the Numatic website or on the Espares website and simply search generically for the brand of vacuum that you have, because you're going to pull up that motor that you just saw just now. What I should have done, which luckily one of the technical experts at Numatic subsequently told me, which I'll come on to in this video, is search for the specific serial number of the motor that I needed, because that brings up a whole different set of results. So taking my old motor here, I'm going to demonstrate that point to you now. You need to phone Numatic, quote the serial number that is displayed on your motor, and they will give you the relevant 6-digit code that enables you to order your new motor. And if I now search for the part number that I was given by the technical support guys at Numatic, look what comes up. That motor is very different from the generic compatible motor that you saw a minute ago in the video, and look at the price, £105.84. But this is the motor that I know will fit my vacuum. And so this is the point. Even though my Henry is an HVR 200, there are so many different iterations of that model that have been produced by Numatic over the years. You've got to make sure that you get the exact right motor to replace the one that's gone wrong. Otherwise, there's a danger it's not going to fit when you try and install it. So what did I do? I then phoned up Henry technical support, which is what I should have done in the first place. Spoke to a really nice guy there, and he told me a couple of really interesting things. The first thing he said is, you can get genuine pneumatic Henry replacement motors from resellers who are buying them in bulk, and therefore they are able to offer a more reasonable price than you get on the Numatic website. It still doesn't quite square with me why Numatic have to sell their motors for so much. The guy at Numatic couldn't have been more helpful. I gave him the serial number on my Henry, and he gave me the code that I needed to quote when buying the replacement pneumatic motor. So then I went on eBay, I put in the code he gave me, searched for it, and hey presto, look what came up. A genuine brand new pneumatic motor for my exact Henry vacuum cleaner from a company called AID Cleaning Store. $39.99 with free postage and packaging. This is what I've been looking for. And the new motor has just arrived handily in time for this video. Now, there was something else that the guy in the technical department at Numatic told me, which was really interesting. I had a bit of a moan to him about why Henry vacuums are a lot less powerful than they used to be. Now, I know new European regulations came in a couple of years ago, I think it was about 2014. which did make vacuum manufacturers have to lower the wattage of their machines. My old vacuum that we're working on today is 1100 watts, and you can see here one of my new vacuums is only 620 watts. On the face of it, that seems like a massive loss in power, doesn't it? But the point that he made to me was this. In 2014, when Numatic had to lower the power of their machines, they changed the whole design of the machine, with the net result that the actual suction power of the machines hasn't really changed much. Now, vacuum manufacturers use something called the airflow water gauge measurement to measure the suction of their machines. The previous machines, these sort of 1100 watt machines like the one that we're looking at today, had an airflow water gauge measurement of 2,400 millimeters. The newly designed machine, which is only 620 watts, has a suction measurement of 2,300 millimeters, interestingly. So the power consumption of the machine is almost half of the original designs, but the airflow suction measurement is only 100 millimeters less than it was previously. So I think it's very easy to look at the machine that used to be 1100 watts, now 620 watts, and start complaining that actually the machine isn't as good as it used to be. The reality is they are almost the same. The other point to make, of course, is that by going down from 1100 watts to 620 watts, you're actually using up a lot less energy, so it's saving you money. So that's enough of the boring stuff, let's crack on with the repair. Today's toolkit's reasonably straightforward. I've got my electric screwdriver here. I'm putting an extended PZ2 bit on the end of it, because you have got some sort of fairly deep screws to access. And the only other thing I have found I need is this pair of pliers, because a couple of the electrical leads did need a little bit of coaxing off their connectors. Not essential, but I've also got some methylated spirits that I used to clean a couple of connectors and an old rag. And it's messy work, this, so if you want to get yourself a pair of gloves, that's probably also a good idea. Good idea to spread out a dust sheet. It just gives you something to settle a vacuum on when you start taking it apart. And really useful to get some newspaper as well, because believe you me, when you've had a vacuum like this for 15 years, there is a lot of unpleasant black sooty like dust that comes out when you start taking it apart. Like so many brilliant designs, the secret of this Henry is its simplicity. I'll show you just now how easy it is to take it apart. I think it's only 7 screws. So we've got four screws to remove here. Now we've got another 1, 2, 3 screws to remove here. Now when you tip this upside down, you'll find these little bits fall out. These are the rollers that the cable spool zooms around on, so it's a good idea to take those out now. This bit on the front is also removable. You might need to remove that to get to the switch here. But anyway, I'm going to turn that upside down now so that we can lift this off, and that reveals the old motor. Told you this was an ancient Henry. They do look a lot more modern than this now inside. Look at this. With the motor revealed, you just need to remove these connectors now. In all probability, you'll find that the motor leads are really hard to remove from the connectors, so like me here, you can get some long nose pliers and just pull them away like that. Now the last thing we need to do here is disconnect this bottom cable here from the switch. Again, if you're struggling to remove yours, you can just pull the switch up off there to remove that lead. And that can pull through. And we now have the motor completely removed from the vacuum. Now, I was talking a couple of moments ago about the importance of getting a genuine pneumatic motor rather than a compatible one, because the size of the compatible motors can vary, and as the Henry models changed over the years, they did change the internal compartment sort of areas, and you might have problems if you just buy any old compatible motor. To illustrate the point, this is my old Henry motor, and just opening the box for the new one, we've got a little information booklet there, which is a nice touch. We've got a new gasket, which is a nice touch, and here is the replacement pneumatic motor and a couple of new leads. You look at these two motors, you can see that this is a direct replacement for this original one, both in terms of shape and design. Now, in terms of this motor itself, I have seen a few comments on forums to say people had bought this motor expecting it to be a genuine pneumatic motor and being really disappointed because obviously it wasn't. I mean, yeah, I take their point. There aren't any pneumatic markings on it when you compare this with the original. Simple answer is, I don't know who made this motor. It says on the side Lamb Electrical DL, but there's two things that are persuasive to me. Number one, the technical guys at Numatic recommended the supplier where I bought it from. And number two, when you receive the motor, it comes with this Numatic information booklet. I think what's happened is this is an exchange motor. So it's probably a motor sanctioned by Numatic as being an exchange, a replacement for the motor that was there before. And the last point to make, I think, which puts this argument well and truly to bed, is that if you look at the Numatic website and you type in that code that I gave you earlier on, this is the motor that comes up, which is exactly the same as the one I've just shown you. And exactly the same thing happened, obviously, as I showed you earlier, if you search for that part number on the Espares website, which also clarifies that it's a genuine spare part. I really wish I'd kept the Espares motor before sending it back so I could place it alongside these two, but suffice to say, it looked like this one here that I've just found on the Espares website, and you can see from that picture just how different the design is. The base of that compatible one is much deeper than this genuine pneumatic motor. And it doesn't have the rubber shoes on the base that you need to ensure that the motor doesn't move around and there's a tight fit between the motor and the gasket. Right, I'm going to give these parts a bit of a clean before putting everything back together. Clean the connectors on the top of the motor with a bit of methylated spirits just to sort them out a bit. There we go. So, scrolling through this little brochure that they handily send to you, we get to the page for my HVR, which is this one. And this shows you what parts you need and what parts you don't need. We've got a new gasket, we've got two new motor leads, and that's the motor as supplied. If you look at, depending on which motor you asked for, depending on what sort of vacuum you've got, for example, if you had one of these, you'd have that little extra piece on the top of the motor. But in my case, this is what we've got. It shows you there, look, you don't need these extra pieces. This is why it's so important, I think, to buy genuine pneumatic motors rather than a compatible motor. Okay, we've also there got a wiring diagram that shows you how to put it together. You've got the live and neutral going through to the corresponding terminals on the motor itself. Okay, the wiring configuration has changed a bit from the old motor to the new. See, the old motor had these feeds coming off it whereas the new motor doesn't. I suspect this feed that was on here is now incorporated somewhere within the motor. So anyway, turning to the new motor, I've lined up the motor now to correspond with the diagram. I've got my 2 new motor leads. I'm going to connect one there and the other one here. Now I'm going to attempt to put everything back through the holes where they were before. So this one here, so this is the neutral lead, that needs to go through there. I don't know whether you remember from the start of the video, but we had one lead in this hole here, and then the other one, the live lead, came out of here. And then I'm going to connect that straight into the switch there, and then the live lead through that into the corresponding terminal on the top of the switch. Now, at this point, I'm going to turn the motor upside down because I think it's easier to house the motor in the correct place this way up. There is one thing that I think is a bit curious about this. If you look at the old motor, you've got these 2 shoes, and then this part of the motor is at 90 degrees to those shoes, which sort of meant that it fitted perfectly into here in the sense that these 2 bits here went into those 2 bits there, like that. But the weird thing is the new motor, I just don't understand why they've done this. The new motor, these 2 shoes are offset, whereas I think those 2 shoes should be there and there, and you can't rotate this bottom collar. So basically, these 2 shoes here seem to be in the wrong position to me. And the significance of that is that when you insert the motor into the housing, you can't now slot these 2 brushes into the original holes that they were designed to go in, because then the shoe doesn't fit into place. Which is a bit of a shame, but anyway, Numatic, I'm sure there's method in your madness. So I'm lining up the shoe here with that hole there where it's got to slot in, and the same on the other side. Okay, that's in position, and now I can put this back on, lining up these bits here with the corresponding bits there. And of course, the all-important gasket. Turning it over. Now, this is the reasonably tricky bit, because we've got to make sure that these cables, just put our switch in now. We've got to make sure that these cables don't get pinched. So I've put that one in its little channel down there, and then likewise those 3 lined up now. So I can press that down and tighten up my screws. You just want to make sure when you've done those screws up that this cable isn't being pinched. It can sort of work freely, so that's fine. Now that's the tricky bit done. Put our little roller balls back in. This guard's fallen off here. That's for the extra separate switch that my motor didn't have. And we've got this also that slides in here like that. Now we can finally put the top back on. As we put the top back on, we just need to put the cable guide, slot that in there like that. Okay, that's in now. We can swivel the whole thing over. and tighten up the last 4 screws. Got a new vacuum bag. I cannot understand how anyone doesn't use vacuum bags all the time. You hear about some people saying, I'm hoovering up a lot of gravel and soot and stuff, so I didn't think I'd waste a vacuum bag. I'm just going to rely on this. I think that's complete rubbish. The reason I've had this vacuum for as long as I have is because I've always used vacuum bags, and it's the only way to look after your motor. Because if you don't, if you only rely on this, this is not meant as a filter. This is meant as a sort of last line, I think, to protect the motor. If you don't use vacuum bags, the motor is going to start sucking in all manner of soot and dust, and you're just going to shorten the life of your Henry, I think. Just my opinion, but anyway. That's back on. The moment of truth. Everything's back together. We're switched on. Let's see if it works. Fantastic. We've got our Henry back. So pleased, it's like having a brand new vacuum. So I don't know about you, but in this throwaway culture that we live in nowadays, it gives me a massive sense of satisfaction to breathe new life into an old product like this, particularly one that has supported me so faithfully over the years. So if you've got Henry that needs repairing, description of the parts and where I bought them from and the other tools I've used in this video will be available at the end of the video. What you need to do, if you're on a mobile, click on the little arrow to the right of the video title, or if you're viewing this video on a PC, you click on the Show More button, which opens up the description below the video. So I really hope you've found today's video useful. If you liked it, do please click on the like button below, and if you're new to my channel, I'd love to have you subscribe. You can do that by clicking on the link here.